The Rebel Mind. Break rules, bend reality, solve anything. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. You were never meant to fit in. Maybe you've known that your whole life, or maybe you've just started to feel the edges of a life that doesn't quite fit. You've played by the rules, checked the boxes, smiled on cue, and yet something inside you keeps tugging, not loudly, not rudely, just consistently. There has to be more than this. There is. This book isn't about becoming a rebel just to break things. It's about waking up the part of you that's already been questioning, doubting, sensing that the script you were handed might be too small for who you are. It's about understanding that disruption doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like clarity, like courage, like choosing a different question when everyone else keeps repeating the same answer. As the late Jim Rohn once said, the same wind blows on us all. What matters is not the blowing of the wind, but the set of the sail. This book is for those ready to change their sail, not by drifting into comfort, but by aiming towards something truer, something bolder, something entirely their own. You won't find fluff here. No recycled motivational noise. Just practical rebellion, grounded, principled, and designed for people who want to think for themselves and build lives that reflect it. We'll dismantle the unspoken rules. We'll question default settings. We'll look discomfort in the eye and keep moving. And no, you don't have to be loud. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing to think differently. Willing to challenge your limits. Willing to live with intention instead of instruction. This isn't a roadmap. It's a compass. You'll still need to walk. You'll still need to choose. But by the time we're done, you'll stop asking, "Can I really do this?" and start asking the only question that's ever mattered to a rebel. What's stopping me? Let's begin. Chapter 1. Burn the script. Why rebels rewrite reality. You were handed a script the moment you arrived. It wasn't printed, but it was there, etched into every expectation, rule, and sideways glance. Be polite. Sit still. Fit in. Get good grades, get a safe job, find a routine, and stay there. Don't ask too many questions. Don't make things uncomfortable. Definitely don't make people think too hard. And so, most people don't. They follow the script like background actors in someone else's play, waiting for their cue, never realizing they could leave the stage entirely. But rebels don't wait for cues. They flip the table. They question the roles. They look at the script and ask, who wrote this, and why am I still reading it? That one question separates those who conform from those who create. Because every script assumes something about reality. It assumes what's possible, what's allowed, what matters. And rebels know, most of those assumptions are wrong. The script told Einstein that time was fixed. He bent it. The script told Jobs that art belonged in museums and tech in factories. He merged them. The script told Malala that girls should stay silent. She spoke, and the world listened. What they all had in common wasn't genius. It was refusal. Refusal to live by a story that didn't fit the truth they saw. Rebels don't rebel for fun. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's rebellion for truth's sake. They see a mismatch between what is and what could be. They don't burn the script to create chaos. They burn it to make space for something better. Burning the script isn't reckless. It's necessary. Because the moment you realize the rules were made by someone no smarter than you, everything changes. You stop asking for permission and start choosing your own direction. Think about the stories you've been told about success, identity, worth. Who told them? Whose voice are you still obeying when you hesitate, shrink, or apologize for wanting more? Most people never question the script. They think being stuck is their fault, that their dreams are too big, that wanting different makes them ungrateful. But rebels know better. Being stuck isn't a sign of failure. It's often a sign that the script was never meant for you. Some scripts are inherited, family expectations, cultural norms, school rules. Others are self-written, beliefs about not being ready, not being enough, not being allowed, but all of them are editable. All of them can be rewritten, line by line, and here's the secret, no one will rewrite them for you. No one will hand you a new script. You have to grab the pen, you have to light the match. The rebel mind doesn't start with answers. It starts with discomfort. That subtle tug that says, this isn't it. That voice that whispers, there's more. That fire in your gut, that won't shut up no matter how well you're performing the part. That's the cue. Not to try harder, but to break character entirely. So here's your moment. This is your page. You don't need to be ready. You don't need to know how it ends. You just need to stop reading from a story that never belonged to you in the first place. Tear it. Burn it. Say it out loud, this script ends with me. Because you don't change your life by waiting for someone else's approval. You change it by refusing to follow a map drawn by someone who never knew where you were going. The rebel doesn't just live off script, they write a new one, and then live it loud. The rules you follow were likely written by others, challenge them. Rebels don't create chaos, they create clarity by discarding limits. Burning the script means claiming the freedom to choose your own story. Where in your life are you still following someone else's script? Write down one belief or expectation you've never questioned. Now ask, what if that isn't true? Chapter 2. Think like a heretic. The power of intelligent disobedience. There was a time when saying the Earth orbited the Sun could get you locked in a dungeon, not because it was wrong, but because it was disruptive. Galileo knew the truth, and told it anyway. He wasn't just a scientist. He was a heretic. And that's what saved us. That kind of disobedience didn't come from ego. It came from clarity. He saw what others were afraid to admit, that the rules were wrong. Most people think rebellion means chaos. They picture loud mouths, broken laws, raised fists. But intelligent disobedience is something quieter, and far more dangerous. It's the act of saying no with your mind before you ever raise your voice. It's choosing to trust your insight even when it collides with tradition, policy, or expectation. Rebels don't defy for the thrill. They defy because they've seen something others haven't yet. And they're willing to be misunderstood until the world catches up. The most powerful revolutions don't start with explosions. They start with questions. What if that's not true? What if there's a better way? What if we're all just pretending this is the only option because it's familiar? That's heretical thinking. And it's how every breakthrough begins. There's a moment in every rebel's journey where they hit the invisible wall. Not the one made of resources or skill, but the one made of fear. The fear of going against the grain, of being wrong. Of standing alone. That's the true test. Not of courage, but of conviction. If you're going to think like a heretic, you need to get comfortable with discomfort. Because the moment you challenge the norm will push back. But here's what most people miss. Norms aren't rooted in truth, they're rooted in repetition. Just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean it's right. It just means it's been convenient, or unquestioned, or enforced by people who benefit from it staying that way. Heretics don't accept repetition as reason, they test it. They interrogate it, and when it fails, they walk away from it without apology. Being a rebel doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means refusing to swallow anything untested. Intelligent disobedience isn't noisy, it's intentional. You don't scream just to be heard. You speak when you have something clear to say. You don't break the rules just to prove you can, you break them when they break the truth. Think of the last time you held back an idea because it went against the room. That's where your rebellion begins, not in fighting others, but in refusing to abandon yourself. Rebels aren't fearless, they just decide that the cost of silence is higher than the risk of speaking. History is full of people who were first dismissed, then doubted, then worshipped, but in between, they were rebels, heretics, troublemakers. Not because they hated the world, but because they loved it too much to let it stay stuck. They saw potential where others saw problems. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't wait for consensus. They thought for themselves, and moved anyway. So the next time you feel that tug, that inner alarm saying this isn't right, don't silence it. That's not resistance. That's recognition, the rebel in you waking up. Let others repeat what they've been told. You were built to question what they never dared to ask. That's not arrogance. That's responsibility. Because when you see the flaw in the pattern, the lie in the logic, the crack in the foundation, you're not supposed to stay silent. You're supposed to act. That's what heretics do, and that's what rebels are made of. Intelligent disobedience starts with thinking for yourself. Rebels question repetition, not just authority. You don't need to be loud to be disruptive, just clear and willing. What's one unspoken rule in your world that you no longer believe? Challenge one assumption today. Ask what if that's wrong, and follow the trail. Chapter 3. The question is the answer, solved by asking better. Most people get stuck not because they lack answers, but because they're asking the wrong questions. They keep hammering away at the surface, wondering why nothing moves. Rebels know better. They don't chase solutions. They chase the real problem. They dig with questions sharp enough to crack the ground. Because the question you ask determines the reality you get. When a problem feels unsolvable, the first thing to challenge is the question itself. How can I be more productive? Assumes the goal is more output. A rebel might ask, why am I doing so much I hate? One question sharpens the machine. The other changes the entire mission. One keeps you stuck in the loop. The other breaks the loop entirely. Einstein once said if he had an hour to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the question and 5 minutes on the answer. That's the rebel mindset. It's not passive, it's precision. Most people get impatient in uncertainty. Rebels learn to sit in it. They don't rush to solve the obvious. They stay curious long enough to reveal the hidden. Think about a time you were frustrated. You asked, why is this happening to me? And got no relief. But then you asked, what can I learn here? Or what's the opportunity I'm not seeing? And suddenly the gears started to move. That wasn't magic. That was a shift in framing. And framing is everything. Questions shape focus. And focus shapes perception. That means if your questions are small, your solutions will be too. Ask, how do I survive this? And you might ask, how do I grow from this? And you evolve. Rebels don't just want to get through. They want to emerge stronger, sharper, freer. Bad questions drain you. They loop endlessly. They assume weakness, scarcity, failure. What's wrong with me? Why can't I get it right? These are dead-end streets. They point inward but go nowhere. Better questions are built with movement in mind. They turn the light forward. They ask, what's next? What's possible now? What haven't I tried? Rebels use questions like chisels. They don't swing wildly. They strike with intent. When something doesn't work, they don't just ask, how do I fix this? They ask, does this even need to exist? They don't ask, how do I compete? They ask, what if I change the entire game? That's how rebels play, by rewriting the rules through the questions they dare to ask. The truth is, answers change. What's right today might be wrong tomorrow. But the skill of asking the right question, knowledge that endures. It scales. It evolves with you. It keeps you awake, adaptable, dangerous in the best way. So how do you ask better questions? First, get curious, not clever. Drop the need to sound smart. Ask what you genuinely don't know. Second, don't settle for the first answer. Dig until you feel the friction. That's where the good stuff leaves. And third, reverse your assumptions. If you think you can't, ask what you would do if you could. If you think something's true, ask what else could be true. Rebels don't follow question marks. They ride them like keys. Every revolutionary idea started with someone asking what others were afraid to. Why not? What if? Who says? That's how you bend the world. So the next time you're stuck, don't shout for answers. Sit still and listen for the real question, because when you find it, the solution will already be halfway home. Poor questions keep you stuck. Powerful ones open new paths. Rebels don't rush answers, they refine the problem first. Better questions aren't clever, they're honest and disruptive. What problem in your life needs a better question, not a faster solution? Rewrite one recurring question in your life. Flip it, reframe it, or reverse it, and watch what happens. Chapter 4. Default settings are lies. Escape the invisible rules. You didn't choose most of the rules you live by. They came pre-installed, like default settings on a device you never configured. You didn't set them, but you follow them. What's considered normal? What's worth chasing? What's off limits? These invisible rules shape your decisions long before you're aware they exist. That's the trap. You think you're living by choice, but you're actually operating on code someone else wrote. Default settings are designed for the masses. They're efficient, comfortable, predictable. But rebels don't do default. They question everything, including the assumptions so deeply baked into the culture that most people can't even see them. Things like success equals stability, passion doesn't pay. Don't take risks past a certain age, work comes before joy. Who decided these were truths? Who benefits from you believing them? You wouldn't keep a phone on factory settings forever. You customize it to your needs. So why are you still living according to ideas installed by parents, teachers, media, or society decades ago? Ideas that may have served someone else's version of safety, but don't serve your version of freedom. The most dangerous lies aren't shouted, they're inherited. They sound like wisdom but function like walls. Be realistic. Stay in your lane. You can't have it all. These phrases seem harmless until you realize how small they've kept you. Default thinking makes you question your desires instead of the system. It convinces you that frustration means you're flawed, not that the rules are. Rebels don't blame themselves for feeling boxed in, they recognize the box. Then they dismantle it. They understand that discomfort isn't a personal failure, it's a clue. A sign that something about the structure needs rewriting. And the structure always starts in the mind. There's a moment when you begin to see the code. You realize that working a job you hate for 50 years isn't noble, it's a program. That suppressing your creativity because it's not practical isn't mature, it's programmed fear. That believing certain identities are more worthy of power, voice, or peace, also programming. When you see the code, you can start to edit it, not just escape it, upgrade it. The first step is naming the default. Identify what rules you've been living by without consent. Write them down. Don't judge them, expose them, then ask. Who gave me this rule? Do I still believe it? What would happen if I broke it? This isn't about being reckless. It's about reclaiming authorship over your own narrative. Rebels don't live by factory settings. They jailbreak the system, not to break it, but to access their full power. They don't wait for permission to rewrite the script. They know they already have it. The only thing standing between you and the version of your life that excites you is the set of defaults you haven't deleted yet. And here's the truth they don't want you to know. The moment you question a default, you're already free from it. You've stepped outside the loop. You've seen behind the curtain. You don't need to fix your entire life overnight. You just need to change one rule and live like it was never true. That's what rebels do. They escape invisible cages by daring to see them. They replace inherited beliefs with intentional ones, and in doing so, they stop living by design they never chose, and start creating one they do. Most of your beliefs were installed before you could evaluate them. Default settings keep you limited, not because they're true, but because they're comfortable. Rebels rewrite internal code by challenging invisible assumptions. What normal in your life is actually just a default setting you've never questioned. List 3 beliefs you were taught about success or identity. For each one, ask, is this actually true for me? Chapter 5. The Beautiful Trouble of Curiosity. Curiosity doesn't whisper. It pokes, nudges, interrupts. It shows up at inconvenient times, asking questions that make your voice shake and your heart beat faster. It doesn't care about the plan. It doesn't ask for approval. It just asks, what if? Again and again, until you either listen or numb yourself to silence it. Rebels don't silence it. They follow it, even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy, because curiosity is the rebel's compass. It's the tool that uncovers buried truths, dismantles tired patterns, and reveals doors and walls you thought were solid. But here's the truth no one tells you: curiosity will get you into trouble. Beautiful, necessary trouble. The kind that changes everything. Most people outgrow their curiosity. Or rather, they're taught to. Kids ask hundreds of questions a day. Adults? Barely a handful. Somewhere along the line, asking became a sign of ignorance. Not knowing became shameful. Wonder became inefficient. So we stopped. We shut down the part of us that challenged the obvious. The part that wandered off path. The part that noticed a crack in the foundation and dared to ask why it was there. But rebels reclaim that part. They stop treating curiosity like a luxury and start treating it like a weapon. Not in the destructive sense, but in the sense that it cuts through illusion. It clears away clutter. It strips everything down to its essence. Curiosity isn't childish. It's courageous. It means being willing to look at the world, not as you've been told it is, but as it actually is. And that takes guts. Because when you start following your curiosity, you'll upset some things. Systems prefer compliance. Institutions reward certainty. The curious are disruptive because they're not easily managed. You can't control someone who's still asking questions. They might discover a better way. They might realize the emperor has no clothes. They might decide the rules make no sense and stop playing by them entirely. That's the risk curiosity brings. And that's why it's so powerful. Think of every rebel who ever changed the world. They didn't start with answers. They started with questions that made other people uncomfortable. Why not me? Why not now? Why not differently? They didn't wait until they had proof. They followed the scent of something that felt true, something the world hadn't caught up to yet. Curiosity makes life richer, not safer. It leads to detours, not shortcuts. It asks you to trade comfort for discovery. That's not a cost, it's an invitation to become fully alive. Because curiosity doesn't just open doors out in the world. It opens them inside you. It leads you back to parts of yourself you forgot were there, the maker, the explorer, the challenger, the artist. It reconnects you to wonder, and wonder is the birthplace of vision. So let it lead you. Ask the weird question, explore the idea no one else sees. Follow the thread that tugs at your attention, even when it doesn't make sense. Let curiosity make you inconvenient. Let it make you restless. Let it get you in trouble. That's the point. The rebel mind isn't just strategic, it's wildly curious. It doesn't just solve problems, it stumbles into better ones. It plays, it pokes, it dares. And in that daring it creates what could never exist in a world obsessed with only what is. Curiosity is a rebel's compass. It leads to truth others avoid. Asking questions disrupts systems, but also unlocks deeper possibilities. Staying curious isn't childish, it's courageous. What have you felt curious about lately but haven't explored, and why not? Follow one curiosity today. Google it, sketch it, question it, give it air and see where it leads. Chapter 6. Break it to build it. The Rebel's Blueprint for Innovation. The rebel doesn't start by asking, how do I fix this? They ask what's really here. That question alone separates surface thinkers from system shakers. Because rebels don't accept the problem as presented, they take it apart. They crack it open. They break it down to its bones. Then, they start building, deliberately, differently, from the inside out. Most people try to innovate by adding more features, more hacks, more polish. But rebels understand that real innovation begins with subtraction. It begins when you strip something down so far that all the noise falls away and only the truth remains. That truth is your foundation, not the version you inherited, but the version you revealed. This isn't destruction for the sake of drama. It's deconstruction for the sake of clarity. It's first principles thinking. Elon Musk used it when he looked at rockets and asked, why do they cost so much? Everyone else took the price tag for granted. Musk broke it down. Steel, fuel, guidance systems, basic parts. He found the true cost was a fraction of what everyone believed, so he built his own. That's the rebel blueprint. Don't tweak the machine. Question why the machine exists. You don't need to be an engineer to think this way. Break it to build it applies to anything, business models, belief systems, personal habits. It starts with asking, what is this thing really made of? Not what people call it. Not what it looks like, but what it actually is. What job is it doing? What problem is it pretending to solve? When you break something down to its essence, you stop being intimidated by its complexity. You start to see it for what it is, a collection of assumptions, glued together by habit and history. Once you see the parts, you can reimagine the whole. Of course, breaking things comes with risk. People get uncomfortable when you challenge the familiar. You'll hear, that's how it's always been. Don't reinvent the wheel. But rebels aren't trying to reinvent the wheel, they're trying to figure out if the wheel is even necessary. Sometimes it is. Often it isn't. But you'll never know if you don't question the shape. Breaking something doesn't mean destroying its value. It means testing it to see where its value really comes from. You might break a process and discover a simpler path. You might break a belief and uncover a deeper truth. You might break a rule and find a better principle hiding underneath. That's the gift of rebellion. It doesn't just reject, it refines. Might. The rebel's blueprint is simple: disassemble, evaluate, rebuild. It's not chaos, it's craftsmanship. It's looking at the world like a watchmaker, curious about every gear. It's seeing beyond the finish to the form, because when you understand the form, you can reshape it. And when you can reshape it, you can remake reality. So whatever problem you're facing, stop trying to fix the surface. Break it open. Ask what it's made of. Question what's necessary. Challenge what's assumed. Then build again, not bigger, but truer. That's how rebels innovate. Not by chasing novelty, by chasing essence. Innovation starts with subtraction, not addition. Rebels break things down to their core truths before building back up. First principles thinking reveals what's real and what's just inherited. What's one area of your life or work that could benefit from being broken down to its raw parts? Pick one frustrating process or belief. Deconstruct it. List what it's made of, then ask, what's worth keeping, and what isn't? Chapter 7. Make discomfort your compass. Most people treat discomfort like a warning sign. Pain means stop. Fear means turn around. Doubt means back off. But rebels know better. Discomfort isn't danger, it's data. It's the pulse that tells you you're close to something real. It's the internal tremor that signals growth, risk, or truth. You don't run from it. You move toward it, because wherever discomfort lives, something valuable is buried nearby. Comfort zones aren't about safety. They're about familiarity. You can be miserable and still feel safe because it's what you know. The job you hate, the relationship you've outgrown, the life you're sleepwalking through, it's not good, but it's predictable. And predictability can feel like peace. But rebels don't confuse comfort with alignment. They know comfort is often the mask resistance wears to keep you still. That's why they don't use comfort to guide their decisions. They use discomfort. They ask, where am I avoiding friction? Where does my fear spike? Where do I hesitate, even though something inside me is drawn there? These aren't signs to retreat. They're signals to investigate, because discomfort isn't the enemy. It's the edge. Every major shift in your life began with a form of tension. A moment where what you knew collided with what you felt. That's where movement starts, not in certainty, but in discomfort. It's not a red light. It's a blinking arrow pointing somewhere important. The challenge is trusting it. Because the rebel's path is rarely paved, it's forged. And forging means friction. Discomfort doesn't mean recklessness. You're not chasing pain for pain's sake. You're chasing meaning. You're chasing alignment. Discomfort just happens to be the price of entry. You can't step into something new without shedding something old, and that shedding hurts. Not because it's wrong, but because it's real. Think of it like a compass. The needle doesn't point to ease. It points to honesty. Discomfort tells you where the story you're living no longer matches the story you want to write. It shows you the boundaries of your current mindset, and that's where rebellion starts, with awareness, not aggression. You don't have to bulldoze your life, you just have to stop tiptoeing around what matters. The rebel's discipline is simple. When they feel discomfort, they pause, not to escape, but to listen. What's underneath this fear? What am I being invited to confront? What would happen if I didn't run? Those questions reframe the pain. They transform it from a wall into a doorway. There's a kind of alchemy in facing discomfort with intention. You turn fear into clarity. You turn doubt into action. You turn paralysis into momentum. But only if you stay long enough to let the discomfort speak. Most people bolt at the first sign of unease. Rebels sit in the heat. Not forever, but long enough to let it change them. So the next time you find yourself shrinking back, ask what's really at stake. Is it danger or growth? Are you protecting your safety or your smallness? And that distinction matters. Because the rebel mind doesn't seek pain, but it doesn't run from it either. It understands that behind every hard thing is a new kind of freedom. Let discomfort be your compass. Let it lead you not away from fear, but towards something truer, something bigger, something yours. Discomfort isn't a stop sign. It's a signal that growth is near. Rebels don't flee from fear, they investigate what's behind it. Let discomfort guide you to what matters, not what's familiar. Where in your life are you avoiding discomfort, and what truth might it be pointing to? Identify one place you've been hesitating out of fear. Take one small action toward it today, even if it's uncomfortable. Chapter 8. Reject consensus. Embrace clarity. When everyone agrees, it's time to pause. Not because agreement is always wrong, but because it often means no one is thinking anymore. consensus feels safe. It feels warm, it feels like community. But it can be a trap. A room full of people nodding doesn't mean something is right, it means something is unchallenged. And rebels are not in the business of unchallenged thinking. The rebel mind doesn't chase agreement, it chases clarity. It wants to know what's true, not just what's popular. It listens, yes, but it questions just as quickly. It doesn't confuse the volume of voices with the weight of logic, because consensus can kill innovation. It can flatten ideas before they've had time to evolve. It can push you to dilute your vision until it's palatable to everyone and powerful to no one. There's a moment in every rebel's journey when the crowd starts to turn. When they say that's not how it's done, or that'll never work, or you're overthinking it. That's the moment clarity must override consensus, because the rebel isn't here to echo the group, they're here to see what others can't. And often, that means walking alone, at least for a while. But clarity isn't arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better. It's about knowing what's right for you, even when others don't get it. It's being able to say, I understand where you're coming from, and I'm still going this way. That kind of inner certainty isn't loud, but it's unshakable. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't flinch in silence. It moves forward with purpose. Rejecting consensus doesn't mean rejecting community. Rebels value input. They seek feedback, but they know how to filter noise from signal. They know when the group is guiding them, and when it's blinding them. Sometimes consensus is helpful. Most times, it's comfortable, iron and comfort. As we've seen, rarely leads to breakthrough. Clarity comes from solitude, not from crowds. It's built in the quiet, when you sit with your own thoughts long enough to separate fear from instinct. That's why rebels make space to think alone, to strip away influence. To hear their own voice before the world tells them who to be. This isn't isolation, it's orientation. It's how you find your true north, when the compass around you spins. Consensus loves symmetry. Clarity loves truth. The two don't always overlap. Rebels are willing to disrupt harmony if it means staying honest. They're willing to say the thing that makes the room uncomfortable, not to provoke, but to reveal. Not to destroy, but to wake people up. Because clarity doesn't just serve the rebel, it serves everyone, eventually. Think of the last time you ignored your gut because others disagreed. Did it lead you somewhere better, or just somewhere quieter? Rebels trust that clarity will carry them further than consensus ever could. They'd rather be briefly misunderstood than permanently misaligned. Because rebellion isn't about being contrarian. It's about being congruent with your values, your vision, and your truth. So don't seek agreement. Seek alignment. Seek the place where your thoughts, feelings, and actions lock into place. Not because someone else said so, but because something deep inside you knows it's right. That's what clarity feels like. Not ease, not comfort. But certainty. The kind that doesn't beg to be validated. The kind that simply moves. Consensus often masks unchallenged assumptions. Question it. Clarity is stronger than agreement. It's personal, not performative. Rebels think independently, even when the crowd moves in another direction. Where in your life are you following consensus when your clarity says otherwise? Take one decision you've been delaying. Block out the noise. Choose what aligns, then commit. Chapter 9. Be loud or be true. The quiet strength of inner rebellion. The world celebrates the loudest voice in the room. It rewards charisma, volume, certainty. But rebellion doesn't always sound like a battle cry. Sometimes it's a whisper that refuses to go away. Sometimes it's a quiet no in a room full of yes. Sometimes it's doing what's right with no one watching. Not all rebels roar. Some rebel by simply staying true. We live in a culture that confuses visibility with value. If you're not broadcasting it, it must not matter. If you're not loud, how will anyone know you're serious? But rebels don't perform rebellion. They live it. They don't need to be seen to be significant. Their power doesn't come from the spotlight. It comes from the alignment between what they believe and what they do, even when no one claps. Quiet rebels are dangerous in the best way. They aren't swayed by noise. They aren't fueled by attention. They're rooted. Which means they can't be easily pushed, pulled, or sold. Their strength is internal. And because of that, it lasts. Loud rebels often burn out trying to prove a point. Quiet rebels just build the new thing, and let the results speak for them. Being loud is easy. being true is costly. It takes more courage to live your values silently than to shout them online. It takes discipline to keep showing up when no one notices. But that's where integrity is built, in the unnoticed spaces, in the moments when you make the harder choice, not because it's visible, but because it's right. Think of the people who've made the biggest impact on you. It wasn't just what they said, it was how they moved through the world, their consistency, their quiet courage, their refusal to become someone else to fit the room. That's inner rebellion. It's not showy, but it shifts things. It challenges people to rise. It invites others to rethink. Being loud can be useful. It can draw attention, ignite movements, disrupt silence. But volume without substance is just noise. And in a world already full of noise, what we need most is presence. Rebels bring that. Whether they speak with thunder or with calm, their words carry weight because they're grounded. They've done the inner work. They've chosen truth over applause. Don't confuse quiet with passive. Quiet rebels are active in ways the world can't always see. They're building, listening, observing, waiting for the right moment to strike, not for attention, but for impact. And when they move with precision, no wasted energy, no performance, just clarity. So if you're not the loud one, that doesn't mean you're not a rebel. It means your rebellion looks different, and maybe more sustainable. Maybe more contagious. Because when people see someone standing firm without shouting, it makes them curious. It invites reflection. It shows that power doesn't have to be explosive to be real. The rebel mind knows that truth doesn't always need a microphone. Sometimes it just needs consistency. Quiet rebellion is powerful because it's not about ego. It's about essence. You don't rebel to be seen, you rebel to stay real. In the end, you can be loud or you can be true, if you're both great. But if you have to choose truth, every time. Rebellion isn't always loud, quiet, consistent truth can be just as powerful. Visibility doesn't equal value. Rebels act from conviction, not applause. True power is rooted, not performed. Where in your life are you being loud when you might need to be more true? Practice silent rebellion today. Make one value-based decision without announcing it, just live it. Chapter 10. Redraw the map. How rebels invent new paths. Most people spend their lives following maps drawn by someone else. Education tells them which steps to take. Culture tells them where success lives. Tradition tells them which roads are safe. And they walk those paths dutifully, even when the scenery feels wrong. But rebels don't stay on roads that lead to places they don't want to go. When the map runs out, or when it was never meant for them, they draw a new one. Maps are useful until they aren't. They're based on the past, on what someone else discovered, on terrain that may have changed. They assume the goal is to get where others already went. But the rebel's path isn't about replication, it's about creation. They don't want to arrive at someone else's destination. They want to make a place that didn't exist before they believed in it. Redrawing the map means you stop asking, what's the next logical step, and start asking, what matters now? You stop seeking well-lit signs and start trusting your own sense of direction. That's risky, yes. But it's also how every breakthrough, invention, and revolution was born. Not from following the marked trail, but from stepping into the unknown and deciding it's yours to shape. Think of Airbnb. Everyone said strangers wouldn't sleep in each other's homes, that hotels were the only professional model. But the founders didn't ask what was realistic, they asked what was possible. And then they built the infrastructure to support it. They didn't follow a map. They built a bridge between trust and technology, between travel and belonging. And once the bridge existed, others followed. That's what rebels do. They don't just see gaps. They walk into them. They listen for what's missing and decide to become the answer. They aren't obsessed with being different. They're committed to being honest. If no existing path reflects their truth, they blaze a trail that does. This isn't about ego. It's not about being the first for the sake of it. It's about recognizing that following someone else's map will always take you to someone else's life. Rebels don't want borrowed lives, they want alignment. They want agency. They want a path that fits not just their goals, but their values, their rhythm, their identity. Redrawing the map requires two things: vision and nerve. Vision to see what doesn't yet exist. Nerve to walk toward it before there's a clear way forward. The world will try to hand you shortcuts, detours, safer plans. But rebels hold the pen. They're not looking for easier, they're looking for truer. Your current map was likely handed to you, not chosen. School told you what success looked like, friends told you what normal was, systems told you what was possible. But you get to revise that. You get to step back and say, this route doesn't serve me anymore. And you get to turn into the unknown, into the unmarked, into the place where your real life waits. The rebel doesn't just travel differently. They think differently. They stop measuring progress by how close they are to the known and start measuring by how alive they feel in the process. That's the map worth drawing. Not the one that makes the most sense, but the one that makes the most meaning. Rebels don't follow maps, they create paths aligned with purpose. The existing path often leads to someone else's destination. Vision and nerve are the rebel's cartography tools. What area of your life feels like it's following a map that no longer fits? Choose one next step that's not on the map, something that feels true, even if it's not proven. Chapter 11. Burnout, Proof Rebellion, How to Stay Bold Without Breaking. Being a rebel doesn't mean burning at both ends until there's nothing left. It means learning how to sustain your fire. Boldness without boundaries becomes burnout. Passion without pacing becomes collapse. The rebel path isn't about dying on every hill, it's about choosing which mountains are worth climbing, and how to climb them without losing yourself. The world romanticizes exhaustion. It equates hustle with worth, chaos with creativity, martyrdom with meaning. Rebels see through that. They know that a tired mind is not a visionary one. A burned-out heart can't imagine. A depleted spirit can't rebel with clarity. You don't fuel revolution on fumes. You need rest, rhythm, recovery. True rebellion isn't a sprint. It's a series of deliberate steps, repeated with conviction. The rebel's goal isn't to go hard, it's to go far. To live a life of disruption, you need inner scaffolding strong enough to hold the weight of what you're building. That means clarity of purpose, yes, but also practices that keep your mind sharp, your energy clean, your soul intact. Burnout happens when effort outpaces alignment. When you're doing too much of the wrong thing for too long without pause. When you're fighting battles that don't need to be fought, or trying to prove something to people who are never watching. Rebels don't waste their energy on noise. They protect it for what matters. The key is knowing what to protect and how. Rebels create rituals. Not routines for the sake of control, but rhythms that restore them. That might mean time in solitude, daily writing, regular walks, honest conversations. Saying no without guilt, sleeping deeply. It might look boring on the outside, but inside it's fuel. And rebels need fuel, not just fire. Clarity is fuel. Knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Without that, rebellion becomes reaction. You lash out instead of leading. You chase every disruption instead of choosing the ones that serve your mission. The rebel who endures is the one who pauses often enough to remember what they're actually building. This doesn't mean you move slow. It means you move smart. It means you value longevity over drama. It means you don't grind until you collapse. You choose tension where it counts and release it where it doesn't. You don't have to be everything, everywhere, for everyone. You just have to be fully present where your rebellion matters most. Rest is not weakness. It's strategy. Restoration is not laziness. It's preparation. You can't bend reality if you're broken. You can't shift systems if you've lost sight of yourself. The rebel mind stays strong by refusing the story that says exhaustion equals importance. It reclaims energy as a sacred asset. Ask yourself what you're constantly pushing through. What would happen if you stopped pushing and started listening? Listening to your body, your mind, or your inner voice. Rebels know the difference between resistance that should be pushed past and fatigue that should be honored. That discernment is everything. So yes, be bold, be fierce, stand against what needs to fall, but don't set yourself on fire to light the way. Light yourself up from within. Tend to your own flame, rest when needed. Move when called, protect the core. Because rebellion isn't a moment. It's a life. And the rebel who lasts is the one who knows when to pause, when to breathe, and when to rise again. Burnout is not a badge. Sustainable rebellion requires rhythm and recovery. Rebels protect their energy by aligning with purpose and choosing battles wisely. Rest is not retreat. It's part of the strategy to endure. Where are you mistaking burnout for purpose, and what would restoration look like instead? Create one small daily ritual that restores you, then guard it like your rebellion depends on it. Chapter 12. The Rebel Code. Live it, don't label it. Being a rebel isn't about the look. It's not in the clothes, the slogans, or the noise. It's in the decisions made quietly, consistently, when no one's watching. It's a mindset, a posture, a code, and like any code worth living by, it's less about being seen and more about being true. By now you've realized this isn't about chaos. It's about clarity. It's not about tearing things down for fun, it's about refusing to build on shaky ground. The rebel doesn't act out of anger, they act out of vision. They see through the nonsense, the noise, the norms, and they choose a different path, even when that path is unlit, unpaved, and misunderstood. You don't need to call yourself a rebel to live like one. Labels aren't the goal. Transformation is. The Rebel Code isn't about image, it's about integrity. It asks, will you question what's handed to you? Will you choose curiosity over comfort? Will you act in alignment when it costs you applause? Will you keep moving when the crowd stops cheering? The Rebel Code is simple, but not easy. Think for yourself. Speak what's true, protect your energy. Stay curious. Break the rule that says you have to wait. Burn the belief that says you're not ready. Reject the idea that reality is fixed. Bend it, shape it. Create your own, not because it's trendy, but because it's yours. It's easy to be loud once. It's harder to be clear every day. It's easy to post bold words. It's harder to live them in quiet moments. That's the test. The small, unglamorous decisions where your truth meets resistance. The moments where you want to shrink, conform, retreat, but instead, you show up as yourself. No mask, no script. That's rebellion in its rawest form, not spectacle, but presence, not performance, but practice. The rebel doesn't need a stage, they need conviction. They don't need an audience, they need alignment. Their life becomes the message. Their choices become the manifesto, their way of being becomes the disruption. So what now? You've read the words. You've felt the pull. Maybe you've already started to break the script, to bend the rules, to ask better questions, but this isn't where the story ends. This is where it begins. Books don't change lives. Actions do. Insight is nothing without integration. If you want to stay a rebel, make it a rhythm. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for certainty. Show up curious. Show up true. Show up again. Make rebellion your ritual, not a dramatic act, but a daily one. Quiet, steady, powerful. Live like someone who sees more than what's in front of them. Live like someone who knows the map isn't finished. Live like someone who trusts their own compass. That's the Rebel Code, not written in stone, but carried in motion. You don't need to flip tables to change the room. Sometimes you just need to sit differently, speak differently, see differently. You don't need to win every battle. You just need to stay in the fight long enough to reshape it. So walk forward, not as a copy, not as a follower, but as the author of something new. Walk like someone who doesn't just believe change is possible, but inevitable. Because with enough rebels walking their own way, the world eventually shifts, not with a bang, but with 1,000 quiet revolutions. The Rebel Code is lived, not labeled. It's a daily practice of alignment. You don't need to be loud to disrupt, you need to be consistent. Real rebellion is a quiet, clear commitment to truth over approval. What would it look like to live the Rebel Code, not once, but every day? Write your personal Rebel Code. 3 truths you'll live by. Keep them visible. Let them guide your next step. Take care and be well.